Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. And today's video, I'm going to take the ogre painting from the previous video and I'm going to apply some color to it. So I get a lot of questions about this too. And although I've got a couple videos on my channel similar to this topic, maybe this one will clear up some of the questions that some of the fans or whatever have had on this particular way of coloring. So essentially, you get your gray tones, as much value and depth as you want to see in the painting. And one of the things I like to do is actually separate the foreground element from the background. So I just took my time and went around and selected around the artwork. It's not something you entirely have to do, and you can actually build your artwork this way if you so prefer. But it does lend itself to applying some quick color. Even though it's a very basic type painting, you really wouldn't have to separate it to color, but I'll show you where it gives you some advantages. Okay, so the way I get started is I paint right on top of the actual layer. I like to always make a backup copy of whatever I do, so I'll hit Command J and then I'll deselect the background layer so I know I'm working on just the foreground element there. So one of the things I like to do when they are separated like this is I'll just go ahead and lock transparency. So now it'll only paint within the edging of this character. So I'll start with, let's see, I guess I would picture this character to have kind of a goldish red for a skin. Maybe not. Let me just play around with this and see what looks right. I'm not the most proficient colorist, so I just basically dabble around till I get, whatever I think looks appropriate. So we'll start with a base, put a little bit more red in there. Let's try this. But it's color mode. I generally paint with a soft brush. And I'll start at 100% opacity just to see the effect. It's a little bit strong, but that's alright because, we're going to work back and forth with the tones. So what I'll do is I'll hit Command Z and I'll go ahead and paint it in at 50%. And you see I'm painting over everything, but that's not really a big deal. What I'm doing is just kind of, looking at the way the color is affecting the overall character. So now let's see, I want to basically, I want to do two things. I want to darken the tones that are in here, and obviously I could hit that again, and with, bumping up the fact that I went from 50 to 100, it's got a more saturated look, but that's not what I want. I actually want those shadows to be a darker version, maybe even a different version, something along the same color palette. Let's try this. And it's still not dark enough. Another thing I'll do when I'm doing this is I'll bounce back and forth from color to overlay. Sometimes overlay will yield, the look that I like. And that's a little bit closer, but still not there. Let me try more of a brown, more yellow in it. Yeah, that's a little bit closer to what I'm looking for, and we'll notice more, it's almost easier to balance this stuff out when you see the contrast of the other color, like the highlights or whatever. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's bring out some of this tone and bring it to a bit more of a gold, or yellowish gold. I'll try it with overlay at 50. Definitely highlights the face better like that, but still not what I'm looking for. Let's go back to color. No, definitely not it. A little bit closer, back to overlay. Yes, I actually like that better. That to me is giving, the skin always has a couple different colors. Anybody's skin tone has a few different colors to it naturally. So it's good to recognize that and place that into the painting, even if they're not, obviously this is a fantasy painting, so this character can have, he could have purple skin for all, for all we know, so you just basically grab whatever. So yeah, I think that little bit right there livens them up a bit. That. And again, I'm working off 50% opacity, so anywhere where I want it to be a little bit more intense, I can just run over that spot again and I'm applying really light pressure, just so you know. I like to slowly work up the intensity of the effect. And I'm actually going to be very sparingly by putting it in the body, because I want your attention is at the face. So I want the color to reflect that a bit. Okay, so now let's do a little bit with the armor here. I think the skin still needs a bit more, but I want to see what kind of again, I'm trying to contrast everything from one another. So the armor, or actual kind of material, I'll picture this being a bit more of a orangish brown. We may have to change the color of this altogether. I'm going to see how this works out. Again, I'm on overlay mode there. I want this to be a little bit more rich, so that's okay. I got a soft brush, so I can easily, kind of run a fade up like that if I want. I think that works a bit. And I want something different with the eyes. I want it to have a little bit more of a contrast away from the face. So let's try, I guess I could even try something more into the reddish pink here. Again with the overlay, because I want it to be kind of vivid. Yeah, something like that. Makes them look a little more gruesome. And you can always take some of that reddish tone and go into the actual eyelids. Not that his eyes are glowing, but just that maybe some of the, the blood is showing through, kind of like the bloodshot eyes and the bagginess, or I don't know. You know what I'm saying, right? Okay, so now the spikes and the axe. I would think for those, maybe something like more into the golden, but I don't want it to be like a bright, shiny gold, because it's not the type of character this is. So maybe like a, into the golden tones, keeping all this, somewhat earth tone kind of, but just, yeah, kind of dingy. So maybe I'll just do that real quick, and then we could even, apply some darker tones, but that's actually working out with that little bit of red that was already in there. Same thing with the earrings. And the beauty of locking transparency is it's, I don't have to worry about, if I hit something over there, it's staying right into the character, nothing into the background. Okay, so now his hair here. Let's see here. Let's just try a discolored yellow at first. We can always paint over it. Not too bad. It's almost a tad too bright. We want it to look a little bit more murky and messy. We're already on overlay, which tends to be a little bit more saturated. Let's see if we just paint some brown in there, which is kind of turning it a bit red. This might not be a bad thing, but. And the other thing that you can do when you're working with your colors like this, if you're not getting a result that you like, a couple things really. You can go to the burn tool, and I could say burn the shadows in here. See how it darkens up the shadows in that area? So that's a little too much. Midtones is actually a really good one to start with. Seems like it's a little bit more balanced when you do midtones. Still not exactly what I'm liking or wanting to see there, but another thing that we can do is take one of our brushes like the chalk brush or the hairbrush that it was originally painted with, and we can now go to normal mode and just start painting traditionally. So we can leave it on 50%. We can select some of the tones that we're wanting to see more of in there. So I'll start with this. Just lightly glance over it. Grab some of those darker tones. And then you just have to remember that now you're back to painting the way that you were thinking in terms of your grayscale, but with your color. So it's just basically traditional painting this way. And if you want it to be even more traditional, oh, sorry, I accidentally switched brushes there. If you want it to be a bit more traditional, you can up the opacity all the way to 100%, and you just got to be really light-handed unless you're confident painting this way. And just keep going back and forth and selecting the color until you get the effect you're after. And keep in mind, I'm also scaling the brush up and down as I paint, so I can kind of find the right texturing here. If you notice, I just took the transparency off. Sometimes you got to be careful that whatever you're painting on, if the transparency pixels are locked and you didn't make sure to make the underlying layer or the underlying work that you're working on, the actual work that you're working on, if it has any transparency to it, then it'll look like you're not painting. You'll keep going over the same area and it'll appear to not have any effect. Well, that's because transparencies are locked and it's not a fully opaque layer. So hopefully that makes sense to you there, but that sometimes happens. But I really don't need to do that because I know I took the time to select the opaque area of the layer. Alright, that's still not what I'm digging there, but I'll keep dabbling with it. I kind of go through the whole thing and then go back and forth and find, what looks right. Now another thing I like to do is I've got the character selected like this, is I'll do my secondary light source. On this particular one, I'm going to use kind of an off blue somewhere in here. Again, grab my soft shadow brush. I'll turn the opacity down for this, and I'm picturing there being an underlying light source right here. So I've got that on normal mode. So let me take that back. Let's put that on overlay. And maybe not. Let's try color. Yeah, I think color will do it. A little bit more opacity. And what I like about effects like this is it rounds out the form almost immediately and gives you a little bit more of a dimensional feel of your character. This blue is actually a little bit strong, but we can fix that too, so it's not a big deal. And just kind of play around with it and picture where the secondary light source would hit along the character and his, you know, obviously the spikes here are going to get it because they're probably a little bit more reflective. And something to keep in mind, skin's actually really reflective. That's why you see me go right to the, well, for one, the face is the main, you know, piece or whatever, the centerpiece. So I always go right there to the main aspect of the painting. But I do that to remember that, you know, skin's very reflective, that the light is going to, you know, directly bounce off the skin kind of all over the place. So just kind of softly painting that in. And I'll even turn this way down and kind of just glance over the entire face a little bit. Stronger at the bottom. Okay, so we can picture that being the light source that's on the front of the character. And even a little bit off the tooth here, teeth. Now the other thing is to maybe think about what might be coming from the back of the character, so the background. So first we'll jump over to the background. Again, I'll make a copy of it. Just allows me the easy ability to go back if I do something that's maybe irreversible, but it's actually pretty hard to do. Like even this right here, I'll show you something. If you feel that you did something, you know, that you don't like with the color, and you pan back and you're like, oh, it's totally off, just remember that if you just go image mode, image, where is it? Adjustments, desaturate. All right, it turns back to that, right? Now if we put the other layer behind it and I disappear this top layer, so there's very little change. And in all reality, it probably made the painting a bit better in a grayscale. So you don't have to worry too much about that. Hold Command Alt Z, and then I'm back to where I needed to be. So I just make that backup because it makes me feel a little bit better about being able to check my work. Okay, so now the background. So for the background, we'll start with a darker brown. A little more muted too. Let's try this. Again, I'll hit the whole area. Oh, opacity's really light. Let's just bump that right up. Okay, and then the top sky area, let's try a reddish yellow somewhere in. You know what, let's try over here. Just more of the purplish red. Or just purple. Let's see what that looks like. Whoa, way too strong. Let's tone that down by a lot. I just want to add a little bit more color to the scene because I got so much, you know, earth tones and browns going on. I just want to see it with a little bit more color. I think that helps a little bit. Okay, so now another thing to keep in mind is, say we pick, you know, a little bit more of a, let's see, let's try a blue mixed in with that. Yeah, I think that's better than just all the purple there. Okay. The other part I wanted to show is now that if we went with something else, well, let's see what the blue looks like even as a secondary color on the back of the ogre. So we've got the ogre selected again. On color mode, 35%. And I can do something to do a backlighting, you know, off the ogre, like something like this. On the back of the axe. Back of the ear. Pan back, see if that works. I don't know if that's the right color per se. I think it is, but I know it rounds out the character more. So if I was to take it back a few and we look at it without, and then Control Z again brings it back one more time. So that's without and with. I think it definitely does something for it. I don't know if that's exactly the right look I'm going for. Another cool technique that you can do is take the same color but go to color dodge like so, and what it does, it dodges the highlight on the back of the character, but also with that color in mind. So it does kind of this this kind of cool effect where it, you know, jumps up the intensity and still keeps some of that color in there. So I usually do that right on the very edge. I'll get the brush size down pretty small and just kind of trace around the edge of whatever I'm painting. Doesn't work on all colors the same. You know, sometimes you just want to paint that in, but sometimes it works really nice. Okay, so I think I'll leave it over there. I mean, I could probably do a little bit on the back side of this too. Not much. Okay, so now anything that stands out as like glaringly, you know, not, you know, enough or not, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, just still isn't jumping out at me. I think the skin tone still needs another bit of contrast or tone to it. And I think maybe some of the depth in the background needs to be brought out. So if I go to the background copy here and grab the burn tool, let's first try midtones. That's not what I'm looking for. Let's try going right to shadows. Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. What it does is it pushes the character forward just a little bit more. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, just like that. Okay, so now another thing I'll do is grab the dodge tool and I'll grab the character. First I'll start off on highlights, make sure I've got a soft brush. The reason why I like using a soft brush for most of this is it doesn't leave any artifacts. By painting all the gray tones the way that I wanted them, I'm not really trying to add any more texturing or artifacts to the work. So that's if I add some the dodge to the front, so it punches up that light source in the front of them a little bit. It might be a little bit too much, but I don't know. I kind of like it. I have a hard time not going with the more intense light sources. I know I definitely would try it in the eyes here. They just look a little bit too glossed over and boring. I can start there, and then, you know, I always go for the metallic surfaces first. Punch those up a bit. And even the hair on the front here could use it. Alright, I'm going to try just a few spot areas first. Yeah, I'll go ahead and leave that. Okay, so now as far as color, one of the things that I think could be a little bit better is I'm going to try a different color on the axe. I'm going to try a little bit of that blue, but with a lot more gray into it. So something down into here. I'm going to try this both on color. See, I like that more. The only thing it does, it takes away the nice two-tone that it had with the blue there. So let me try overlay, which overlay is probably going to just be more saturated. No, probably not. Let's try, what else? Can't really think of a whole lot of colors that an axe would be, but let's make the base something else, even though it's still going to be the gray. It's still about the same, I guess. I definitely think the axe needs to be a different color. It almost provides another layer in between the character and the background. So I'm going to go with that, even though I still like the two-tone effect that it was giving a minute ago. But what I'm going to try to do to bring that back out is just to take the dodge tool now and then glance across the front of the axe more. And then maybe even a really strong highlight on the tip of it like this. See if that helps. And maybe take this back with the color mode again and paint that color in there a little bit stronger for the blue. That way I'm still getting a good amount of depth, you know, on that axe. And I still missing something on the skin, so let me try one more color tone with that. Now, the way I want to wrap this up, because this is pretty much how I would color, and I'm not very advanced in my coloring, but once I get it to this level that you see here, we'll actually start sampling color and doing what I showed you before as far as using normal modes. And you know, if I feel that the colors need to be a little bit more rich or solid in certain areas, that's just the way that I do it. For something like this is probably pretty close. I would just try to, you know, get a little bit better realism and something going on that skin. It just looks a little too flat. Now keep in mind too, the other thing that I would possibly do is look at reference, not necessarily of a human. You could, I mean, by all means you can, but then you can also use reference to animals, whatever, and you can look at the variety and their tones and skin, and you can incorporate that into your painting. So, you know, if you're feeling that something's looking a little bit too flat or boring or mucky or whatever, that's when you can go to reference and start, you know, not copying it, but just pulling from the idea of it. So let's see, I want to see a little bit more. Let me actually try something like this, where a little bit more of a pale lavender back with the color. Again, I'm going to make a copy of it. Not that I really have to, but just to be safe. Let's see. Now, keep this in mind too. Sometimes you can paint into the highlight areas and get one effect, right? So I take this color and I paint it all through the highlights. I'm staying off my my secondary light source, and I get one effect, right? So I pan back, that looks a little, like he's got makeup on his face or something. So that's not right. So Command T. But now I can take that same effect and I can paint into the medium tones of it. And you can do the same thing and try the shadows. So all I'm saying there is don't always think that you have to, for one, glance over the whole object, and for two, that you don't have a couple options of where to place the color, especially when it comes to faces. You've got the highlights, the mid-tones, the shadows. All those areas could be colored individually to get more enriched kind of effects. So right now I'm just kind of hitting where there's that transition of light and dark. And see how that yields a little bit different effect. And I still don't know that it's exactly right or anything, but it's a little bit more beneficial than the last way that I just colored it. Now, if I take this one off, I can see the shift. And I would say that I like it more. I just like the fact that it's got a little bit more life in the face. The other way just looks a little bit too muted or boring. And the ears, I would probably say take a bit more of this pinkish color somewhere in here and punch that up a bit. And grab the gold again. And you just keep playing, playing with that back and forth. Maybe the teeth got, kind of an off yellow to them. Imagine this ogre doesn't have dental. Oh, can't forget the warts. Right. Do those a little bit of a pinkish tone. Can't talk. And remember that you can always grab your burn tool, and if you forgot a shadow somewhere, you can still paint that in with the dodge and burn. And actually I got that on shadows. Let me alt back and go to highlights. The only thing to remember, if you paint too much in after the fact with the dodge and burn method at this stage, you'll have to actually grab the nearby color, hold alt, select it, make sure you're on color mode, and then run that color back through the newly created shadows, and it'll take them from being gray to colored. And you can do that all throughout the painting if you have to. So if you got areas that you think tend to look a little bit grayed out or something, you can grab the nearby color and just brush that in, fix it. Usually works pretty well. Yeah, so that's about it. That'll pretty much wrap it up. So hopefully this has helped you. There's obviously a lot further you could take this type of effect and keep going with a painting like this and really bring it out. For the sake of the tutorial, though, I'm going to go ahead and stop it here. And if you got any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments section below. And as always, I appreciate you watching and staying with the channel, and we will bring you more content very soon. So stay tuned, keep drawing, keep having fun. Talk to you later.